We're rolling. Owen,
All right.
thank you for being here, sir.
Well, I appreciate the invite.
Okay, let's start with the distillery and we can talk about everything you do. But let's start there. We got
All right.
your coffee sitting here, so we can start with that.
Yeah, it's been quite the endeavor. You know, at the end of the day, we really try to do things right. We make it ourselves. We just mash it, distill it. We do it all there. That's really important to me. But it's been a road. To open a whiskey distillery is not easy. Everything from the very get-go to federal paperwork, state paperwork, everything involved with distilled spirits is it's a journey. It's a learning journey. I did most of it myself. And you have to sometimes get some help with some lawyers, but it's, and there's a lot that goes into it. I don't know if people really realize when they see a bottle of spirits on the shelf, everything that goes into getting that bottle on the shelf. So there's just to even get the label wrapped around that bottle, there's federal review through, it's the TTB, Tobacco Trade Bureau. They're the ones that enforce fermented beverage and distilled spirits. So you have to submit your labels. They have to review it. If you're approved, they issue a TTB number for that. And that's step one. And then you have to get what they call a NABCA number. So then Montana is a control state. So we're by law required to sell our product to the state, and then they distribute it from there. So there's more to it than just making a good product. Yeah. There's a lot with the process of getting those products on the shelf. Quite a bit of paperwork that goes behind it.
Yeah, Jason, who connected us, was explaining a little bit of the way that works with the state.
Absolutely,
and then then you got to buy it from a state store, and that whole kind of rigmarole.
So I can take a case. We have 6 bottle cases, and I am allowed to sell limited bottles out of my sample room there at Black Pot.
Okay.
We have limited hours, and you can come in for some samples. We're limited on what we can serve per person per day. And so when an order comes in, we have to either sell it to a state liquor store or we got to get it up to Helena. And I think Jason kind of covered some of that.
A little bit.
It's going around and, if you have a bar that wants to buy a bottle, you got to kind of convince the liquor store to be like, hey, this person wants a bottle, but you got to buy a case. So it has its challenges.
And there's how many in a case?
We have 6 bottle cases.
Okay.
There's other distilleries that have 12 bottle cases.
And what year did you venture into this?
So I acquired my DSP permit. So DSP stands for Distilled Spirits Permit, federally, January 20.
Okay.
And so it was right before COVID hit.
Yes, yeah.
Prior to that, there's a lot of paperwork that goes with that. So at the same time, it's a risky business. So part of my other business is I install breweries and distilleries.
Yep.
So I do the pipe work, the steam work, stuff like that. And I've actually started a couple distilleries for a couple of other folks. And halfway through the project, they're throwing the towel in. They run out of money. The approval time for acquiring your licenses, both federally and through the state, there's a fair amount of time involved there. So during that time, you have to maintain a lease or you have to show ownership of the property and you're paying the taxes and all this and you're buying the bottle, you're buying everything, trying to set up the equipment. So it's financially straining to do this. And
do you know what is that time essentially, from the day you apply for your first permit? Are you looking at a year?
About a year.
Yeah.
It can be done, I'm sure, a little quicker than that. I hired legal counsel to take care of the federal level. And then I was like, well, I'll take on the state level. I probably should have reversed those roles. I actually felt that the federal level was a little bit more simple than the state level. But, it took me about a year, a little bit more. And during that time, you're building the distillery.
Yeah.
So it's challenging. And especially with whiskey, whiskey, you don't want to You're not going to open up with a 4-year product. I mean, you can if you buy it from somebody else, but we're determined to, at Black Pot, we mash, distill, and we don't do any blending with source liquor. So it's a waiting game. You know, you got to distill it, you got to get it into a barrel. Barrel's got to go on the shelf and got to age. And so has its challenges.
You're making me think this was right around COVID time, and it was similar to when I started my business. I was driving a client from Big Sky down to Bozeman, and he was talking about there was a huge shortage of pilots, and he used the analogy, it's like trying to rush aged whiskey to get pilots, because pilots they have to be trained. It takes time to get experienced pilots, and to that, this is the same thing. You can't rush.
You can't rush. You absolutely can't rush. You can't rush quality.
Yeah.
The merits of a pilot, that's obviously important.
Yeah.
And if you want good whiskey, the merits behind good whiskey is important as well. So, for me, it's been a very learning curve. Everything from, there's a lot of government regulation on it. So every month I have to report the amount that we distill, the amount that we put into storage, and the amount that we put into bottles.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's, that's at the federal level. And then at the state level, we have to report what we distill, how much in proof gallons that we distill. And then for bottles that we sell over our tasting room table there, we have to report that monthly, and then we pay the taxes on those bottles.
So they're on top of
everything. They are. Yes, it's the state, everything's online. So it's, you file your reports with the feds, and then you file your bottle sales with the state. And it's at the end of the day, it's about the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. So
I wonder, is there other states that are more advantageous to be doing this in?
It's, there are other ways. So here's an example. So the federal government, they collect their taxes off of what they call a proof gallon. So a proof gallon is 50% alcohol, 50% water. So if you take that at sea level, it weighs a certain amount. It has a very specific weight to it. So everything's done by weight, and then you divide it mathematically, and then you acquire your volume from that. And that's all regulated by the IRS. IRS has this book. It's about 2 inches thick. It's full of tables. Some states follow the same, I guess you call it the same system. They do it by proof gallon. State of Montana, they base it off of basically retail sales. So you have a bottle there. There's tax withdrawn, and then there's basically non-tax withdrawn. So you either have a bottle that has tax paid on it, or you don't. So the bottle's sitting there with the feds. Once it goes into a bottle, you could store that bottle in what they call bonded storage. And then when you're ready to pull that bottle out, you pay the taxes on it. How I kind of run it as Black Pot, as soon as everything goes in a bottle, I just pay the taxes on it.
Yeah.
Because
it's done and you forget about it.
You can be banging your head on the end of the wall at the end of the day trying to keep that all straight.
Yeah.
So then once it gets over to the tasting room, you have the bottle there. Once you sell that bottle, the taxes are owed on it at the end of the month through the state. So you sign on to the state program. It's called Montana TAP. You record your bottle sales, and then you pay your taxes on it. So
it's a process.
It really is.
Yeah.
But you get good at it. At first, you're kind of like, it's kind of a whirlwind. The federal level stuff was kind of like, it's like any government paperwork. It's kind of like, it's a little intimidating at first, but you get good at it, and you get better at it.
Yeah.
And I have Excel spreadsheets literally for every step, for every requirement of reporting. I have an Excel sheet that I've built to definitely simplify things.
Nice. So you're over your location, you said, is over there with Bar 3.
I am in the Bar 3 location. Yep.
Where are you at now in this journey? Do you have products in different stores around here? Where's
I stick mainly to the valley here,
Yep.
Gallatin Valley. Belgrade Liquor, East Main Liquor, and Montana Spirits carries my products.
Yep.
So I started into it very slow.
Yep.
And very kind of under the radar. Really wanted to have some really good aged product to release before we really hit the ground running. I think we're going to start really hitting the ground running here, both with the whiskey and we also do coffee roasting.
Yeah.
We do a whiskey infused coffee bean, ground or whole bean. And so we're kind of at that point where, man, I'm getting into bigger barrels now. Those barrels have been sitting for a while. And so I have the ability to, prior, it was small quantities.
Yeah.
And so part of the strategy of the game, I guess I call it a game, or, part of the strategy of all this is if you have a 15-gallon barrel full of whiskey and it's 4 years old and you've got a row of them there, you pull that barrel. That's another thing with Black Pot. Everything's single barrel. So whiskey's either blended or a single barrel. It's one of the two categories. If you go and you buy a bottle of whiskey and it doesn't say single barrel on it, that bottle of whiskey has multiple barrels of whiskey in it, generally. So everything at Black Pot, when I run out, I go grab another barrel, dump it, we proof it, and that's kind of how it works. But the lineup of barrels that is your inventory.
Yeah.
So if you bottle that up, and I've kept it a little bit on kind of locked in a little bit. There's a thing called tasting room only bottles, and then there's like special order. So special order, you supply the state. Like when an order comes through the state, you got to fulfill it. If it's tasting room only, have a little bit more control on the volume that goes out. You're kind of like, I'm going to send a case over here so that you can have inventory in the tasting room. You can't get wiped out. So if an order for 10 cases comes in and that's all you got left, now you have nothing for the tasting room.
Yeah.
So there's a strategy on the quantities that you have available versus kind of like the product that you're going to be able to put out there. So now that we're getting into bigger barrels and we're getting into a lineup, we have the room now to start really actually supplying this product on a larger scale. So
when you say the order comes through the state, what do you mean by that?
So when a bar puts an order in, they have to do it through the state liquor store up through Helena there. And so if you're non-tasting room only, then you have to provide that order prior to like being able to sell bottles out of your tasting room.
Yep.
So an order comes through for 10 cases. If that's what you got, it wipes you out.
Would there be any reason you wouldn't fulfill that order? Can you not fulfill it if you
Well, if you're limited on the number of barrels that you got,
yeah,
absolutely. And so now that kind of getting into the inventory of bigger barrels, you get more bottles and there's a real strategy to it.
Yeah, it seems like
it. And we don't purchase whiskey from other sources. So we mash and we distill there. And so we do the waiting game on it, but it's difficult. It's difficult. You have to really get a feel for it and where it's, past and future sales. You got to kind of predict what's going to happen with it. So sometimes we're out. Sometimes you go into our tasting room, like right now we're out of the rye.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to get over there, pull that barrel, and we proof it, get it bottled, and get the taxes paid on it, of course. And then we have it back in inventory. So, but that's one more barrel I'm down. So for every 15-gallon barrel that I'm kind of pulling down, I'm trying to put a 30 or a 50 in its place to buy that longevity.
What's that timeline from the day you pull that barrel to the day it's bottled and ready?
Right now, we're sitting on everything I have right now is straight whiskey, which means if you have the term straight on a whiskey bottle, it means it's minimum 2 years.
Okay.
So everything's straight. The rye and our bourbon, we're sitting at around just under 4 years.
Hi, folks. Quick note from me. If you don't already know, the goal of Mountain Mule is to build real connection between Montana's businesses and the people they serve. We provide private transportation services and Yellowstone National Park tours. If this episode or any other has given you something worth thinking about, smiling at, passing along, I've got a small ask. Share it with a friend, text it to someone, consider following the show. Whether you're using our services directly or following and sharing the show, those simple actions help support this business as well as the businesses and guests that have been a part of the show. Thank you for supporting these Montana businesses, local jobs, and this beautiful state. Now back to the show. Yeah, so this really is a like a big numbers game. What's the how far out are you planning stuff? Are you like on 10 years? Are you on 6 years or 2 years?
Kind of I really don't foresee putting whiskey in a bottle. I mean, with our elevation and with our climate here, whiskey ages very quickly.
Uh-huh.
It ages because it's dry. We're almost like high climate. We have very large barometric changes. The barrel's kind of like a really slow moving lung. So as your barometric pressures change,
Oh, interesting.
you're pulling spirits in and out of those staves. And then being very dry, our proof actually goes up in the barrel here. We lose water. So I go into the barrel in a little bit lower proof so that barrel stays hydrated. But by doing that, now you lose bottles.
Uh-huh.
And so, but I feel that you encapsulate the flavors of the barrel better.
Yeah.
That's a quality control thing for me. So with that, I'm on a 53. We're looking at maybe putting some booze in the bottle that's 6 to 7 years. So it's kind of where I'm projecting to. I'm still in my 15s and 30s, and we're moving into the 50s. Haven't quite moved into the 50s yet. We'll be shortly here. But difference between a 15-gallon barrel and a 50-gallon barrel, or 53, is you're talking, you get like maybe 88, 90 bottles out of 15, whereas you get 450, 500 out of a 53.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was curious.
So it's kind of a whirlwind of numbers and kind of getting that all figured out.
It sounds fun if you like numbers. I do like numbers, so it's got my wheels just spinning.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of, I think about it a lot when I'm driving.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's one of those things.
So all your stuff is single barrel. Would you say that every single barrel is a different?
Absolutely. Yeah. And plus it's with every barrel that we release, I try to gain a little bit on the age statement.
Yep.
So I personally like single barrel because your profile can change a little bit. We don't look for a consistent profile. I like to buy a bottle, a single barrel, no matter what brand it may be. And I like to experience taste profile differences. And I don't really, there's good whiskeys out there that just maintain, they have tasting boards and they blend until they hit that exact profile. It's good whiskey. I like it, but I like tasting differences.
So like a Jack Daniels, that's just a bunch of barrels.
That's I mean, there is. I believe Jack Daniels has a single barrel product, but anything that's not listed as single barrel is going to have many, many barrels.
So, are you a new label for every barrel?
No, you only have to gain a new label for a new product.
Okay.
So the product is based off of mash bill. Like wheat whiskey is going to be wheated whiskey, rye whiskey is going to be rye whiskey. So it's basically the label is based off of what you're starting with, your mash bill.
And then as far as sourcing everything to make this, how's that ordeal then?
We don't do it. Others do. Is what it is. I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of it. I think my opinion on that is if you're going to do that, then that needs to be plainly legible on your label. And that's where my beef. There's a lot of good whiskeys out there that are blended, that are sourced from other products. But I feel that should be clearly stated to the consumer when you decide to do that.
Yep.
And there's in my opinion, there's people that aren't transparent about that. So
Yeah.
it is what it is. But by federal law, this is interesting about whiskey. You are required to declare the origin of where it was distilled,
Okay.
and so there's ways around. There's I don't know. So you can, but then again, you can buy a tote of some sourced whiskey or just even grain alcohol, and you pour that into your still and distill it, and you kind of just you know rerun it. Now it's distilled on facility. You put it in your barrels, but there's no mash bill that was performed on. You didn't mash it, you didn't ferment it. Um, so, and that's fine.
Yeah.
You can acquire a great tasting whiskey that way. Just I wish labeling was a little bit more transparent on those kind of situations.
So you'd probably say, I mean, or I'll say at least that you're a purist with
I
a
am.
yeah.
I am. Yes. I we we mash, we distill, we barrel, we bottle, we
Yep.
do it all there. And I know people that blend stuff, and that's fine. Uh, it's on their label.
Yeah.
Like you flip the label around, and they disclose that. But there's been, I think even uh, Jason mentioned that there's been some lawsuits in the past where it hasn't been transparent
Mhm.
with some bigger companies, and they've been called, front center on that.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
yeah.
Is that an advantageous selling point for you?
I think so. I think consumers are starting to, it's about education. It's about knowing about it.
Yeah.
We, in our little sample room, people come in, and we get questioned about it. And we're like, absolutely, everything's 100%. Just, the process is all done here.
Yeah.
Um, the, and I'm not going to go around and police other tasting. At the end of the day, they do what they're going to do.
Mhm.
We just, I've just, we worry about ourselves. We just do it our way. And however people decide to run their stuff, they run it. But it's nice. I think that if you're going to do that and somebody does come in and ask, that you should at least be like, oh yeah, you know, we're sitting at 50% or whatever it may be.
Yeah. No, I could see. I feel like as technology evolves and we all have access to so much information, something like that, people are going to appreciate.
They do. And people are becoming more aware of it. And so we get, people come in and they ask us, and whether they do that at other distilleries, I don't really know, but
Yeah.
we're kind of like, we'll turn the bottle and read the label, like and that's kind of where it gets a little. There's wording on the back, if you buy a bottle of whiskey and it says blended on the back, I mean, all whiskey is blended unless it's single barrel. So some little
Yeah.
little tiny red flags like that,
Yeah.
potentially. So it's, at the end of the day, it's a really fun science to be involved with.
Yeah.
So many variables with it, and it's it, that's why I do it. And it's getting to a point now where we've played the waiting game. We've had the patience with it, and now we can start. We have some inventory, and we can start pushing the product a little bit harder. So that's what we're planning on doing this year. We're going to push the whiskey a little bit, and we're definitely going to, now that we've kind of figured out the coffee, that's been another.
Yeah.
I got into that thinking, oh, it's just roasting coffee. That was not the case. I've burned a lot of beans. It's been a lot of respect for coffee roasters. It's not
Yeah.
easy. The There's almost just as many variables with the coffee as there is with whiskey. There really is. And that's with anything culinary. I mean, I mean, preparing food and cooking food and how you cook it and everything you put into it, those are all variables in how the food tastes. And the same goes into anything that, deals with the palate.
Yeah.
So the coffee has been, that's starting to gain some traction. So we do a whiskey infused coffee. I also now have coffee flavored whiskey. So that is the byproduct of infusing the coffee. And that was an endeavor. Anytime that you, so with the TTB, with the government agency, anytime it's not just pure. So let's say you just have whiskey and it's just grain. You're not putting coloring in it. You're not putting flavoring in it. That's actually fairly simple. That's you turn it in. Here's what I'm doing. Here's my grain bill. They want to make sure the classification's correct. You got the proof correct and all that. But as soon as you go into, let's say, a flavored vodka, or you start uh, adding stuff to it, now you have to turn in a formula.
Mm-hmm.
So formula is like, this is how I make this product. And it has to be very specific, goes in for review. They look at it and they're like, okay, this looks good. And then you get a formula approval. So once you get the formula approval, now you put the formula approval on your label application, and then you turn that in. And then it's basically 2 forms. And they're like, okay, looks like the formula has been approved. We're going to approve the label. It's kind of twice as much to do once you get into. So with the coffee flavored, normally my labels, when I first started, it was maybe a 1 or 2 submittal.
Mm-hmm.
And I had it with the coffee, man. It was like 10 submittals before I finally got it right and was able to acquire that.
How does that infusion process work?
So it's I'm a little proprietary on it. It took me a long time to figure this out because it is a non-alcoholic product.
Uh-huh.
So we have to make sure. So we do initial roast. I do a vacuum infusion, and then we do a rebake, get the alcohol out. And so that's kind of the process of how it goes. So I do use vacuum.
What is that process?
Vacuum is just where the beans go into a vacuum chamber.
Okay.
For a limited amount of time. And that aids with the infusion process. It also kind of pulls some of the CO2 out of the bean. And then it basically goes back into, we do a kind of a real quick rebake on it to get the alcohol out,
mm-hmm.
And then from that point, it's either ground or it's whole bean, goes into the jar. So it's kind of another extra step to make the infusion work. I tried it without that. It just, in order to get both products, the beans at an acceptable, at a good tasting level, and not have the coffee or the whiskey taste like road tar and just absolutely ruin your palate. There's a balance there. So I actually found that in introducing vacuum in there really was able to balance the scales on both products.
And do you notice taste in the coffee?
The coffee doesn't necessarily taste like whiskey, but it really brings out the profiles of the bean.
Okay.
Yeah. And now I've always kind of stuck with basically kind of I've never gone Vienna roast or dark roast.
Uh-huh.
I found that, like, if you do that to the point where the oils come out of the bean when you roast it, the alcohol actually removes that. So now you're removing flavor. So generally it's a medium to kind of medium dark roast. We have had an order for a blonde roast, which is a light roast, come through. So I've been experimenting with that. We put some of that out. And actually, I just had some this morning for the first time. So that has a very nutty profile come across. It's actually almost a little bit sweeter. So you got to kind of realize too that, like, the lighter the roast, the little bit more caffeine that's going to be in it. The little darker the roast, the caffeine kind of dissipates out.
Yeah.
So,
and it seems like there's confusion around that with a lot of people who think a dark roast has more caffeine.
Yeah, and again, this has been the roasting coffee has been a long learning curve. Can't tell you how many beans I've burnt, or I've figuring out the dwell times for the vacuum chamber and figuring out the recook times. And it's just been, I have a 5-star notebook full of notes trying to get it to kind of to where it is now.
Yeah. How about the whiskey? Is any of that available yet?
It is.
Yep.
Yes. Yes. And that's a little more, so that's all hand bottled.
Mm.
Okay. So I don't want the coffee. So I hand bottle all that. I weigh it. Whereas all my other products it's all calibrated piston. I have them, an assembly there that I push a foot pedal, fills the bottle up, labels it. Those I have to hand fill. I don't want the coffee going through the machine and
That makes sense.
hanging
Yeah,
out,
yeah.
tainting the flavors kind of thing. So it's a little more labor intensive. The coffee whiskey is a little bit more labor intensive. But we've been selling it. Comes
Yeah.
out.
Do you have that in stores anywhere?
We do not. That's a tasting room only bottle. It's available at the tasting room, and we kind of sell that as kind of build your own whiskey liqueur. I thought about trying to go into liqueur, but again, it comes to the formulation, and then you have to deal with refrigeration. And man, I tell you what, it's a whole nother level of just.
It sounds like a lot already.
So we kind of sell the whiskey coffee as like, hey, you can put some vanilla cream in here, put your own little sweetener in here, and you got your own coffee liqueur.
Yeah,
kind of thing. Because it is pretty. If you were to just drink it out of a sample cup, it's pretty powerful on the palate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So since you're doing all this, everything in house, what does that whole process look like? It's like, what do you have to?
Well, I buy my grain. It's whole grain. I buy it in tote bags. So I have a warehouse where we store those, and then everything's weighed. So when you just do your mash bill is it's all proportional. So there's this much weight of corn, there's this much weight of rye, this much weight of barley. That's how you establish your mash bill.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all whole grain when I get it. So I take that, I weigh it, take it over to the distillery, I truck all that in there. And then I have a setup. I have a pulverizer. So if you look at the brewing industry, those guys, when it comes to,
No, you're good.
When it comes to fermented beverage on that end of it, they crack the husk.
Yeah.
So there's a process in brewing where it's called lautering. Lautering is a process where the grain drops and you build a natural bed, and that's a filter. I pulverize. I actually go to a flour. So if the brewers were to do that, it wouldn't be a filter. It would just be a plug. It would just, and nothing's going to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to fermented beverage and when it comes to spirits, we follow the same path to a point, and then we kind of go our own direction. There are different. The science is the same. The process is different. It would be a good way to put that. So on my process, I pulverize it into a flour. I have a pulverizer on top of my mash tank.
Okay.
So I auger the grain up there. It drops in. I pulverize it to about a number 2 flour. And that all gets mixed in with the water. You heat the water up. At that point, it's a mash once you get it all in there. And then that's kind of where the science takes over. So if you don't use malted grain, so the malting process, so a little bit about malting, which is interesting. I was just up at the malt tasting event up at MSU.
Okay.
Learned a lot about malt. I was actually probably a little over my head because I don't do a lot with malt. So I put a little bit of malt in my stuff, but there's a process that when you germinate grain and you sprout it, for some reason, enzymes show up. And so what they do is they malt it, and then they stop that process. And now that particular piece of grain has what they call an enzyme in it. So enzymes are necessary to break down starches into sugars. So you have starches floating around, which are like clumps of sugar, but it's too big, it's too bulky for yeast to consume. So yeast is the factor where, yeast starts chewing on sugar. They fart CO2 and they pee alcohol. That is what yeast does. So, but you've got to break those starches down into basically edible items for the yeast. So enzymes go in there and they actually break starches into sugars. And so through heat and through that addition or with the presence of enzymes, you break your starches down into sugars, making it so that the yeast have something to eat. So that's kind of the science and the process of how it goes. And so then once you get your yeast in there and they're all comfortable and they're chewing away on the sugars, that's when you start now your mash is turning into, you're producing alcohol. So that sits I like, depending on what I'm doing or what I'm mashing in, that can sit anywhere from 5 days to, if I'm doing a sour mash, I have a sour mash whiskey that goes a little bit longer at a cooler temp, go anywhere from 5 days out to almost 2 weeks.
Okay.
And so then the process, now that you, once that is completed, now you have a mash there that has alcohol in it. Generally, I don't get as high as yields as everybody else. I use kind of an older, it's just a dry, old kind of, it's a whiskey yeast. I get, it's 8%, you know, um, generally anywhere like with beer, like a beer mash, 5 to, there's, man, I've had some beers around here that are like 11, 12%. So that has to lot, the yeast is another variable
Yep.
within the factor of of it all, that yeah, you can acquire different profiles from it, and different levels of alcohol. Champagne yeast, shoot, man, on a fruit wash, you can sit there and 14, 15%, so it's one of the variables included with it. So then once we're done and our mash is sitting there, then we transfer to the still. Now the still is a piece of equipment where you're cooking the mash and you get it up to temp. So the whole science of being able to separate water from alcohol is the temperature at which it evaporates. So alcohol kind of starts to evaporate around 165. That's the low end alcohols that you don't want. So within the alcohol production, you have your head shots, and those are the nasties. You don't want those in there. Then you have your hearts. That's the middle section. That's the good stuff. You want that. And then you have the tails. The tails are kind of towards the end. Tails kind of generally a little more potent. They'll kind of maybe carry some fusel oils over, and you might get some flavors that you don't necessarily want. Tails aren't bad as far as the sense of making you go blind.
Mhm.
Okay. The first, your head shots, 4 shots, are your methanols, your acetones. That is the stuff that can ultimately affect your eyesight.
Oh, wow.
So, and it's harsh. So as a distiller, so on my process over there, I do what they call, so I have 1,000-gallon tank and I have a 500-gallon still. So I transfer 500 gallons, approximately 500 gallons at a time. And I do what they call a stripping run. So I'm just cranking the steam to it, because I'm not too concerned at that point about making my cuts. I'm just trying to get the alcohol out of the mash. So run it, crank it. And so do that twice. So I drain the still, do the second part of the mash tank. I run those. I do 2 runs of that. And those, when you run that, those are called low wines. So low wines, or they call low wines, are like a low grade alcohol. It comes out, it's kind of foggy, it's not great, the AB, because I'm running that still down to like basically 5, 5 proof. I'm just trying to get the alcohol out. So, and then we clean the still back up. We take the tank there. I have a low wine tank, and then we put it back into the still. We change the water out. I run a thumper, or what they call doubler. And so I'm forcing the water through a water bath. That acts as kind of like a coffee percolator. The best way, you got vapor coming in, you're forcing it underwater, you're forcing it through the water, and the water acts as like a natural scrubber. So we put the low wines back into the still, and I run it again. And so at that point, now we're running what they call high wines. These are like the spirits that you keep. So when you're running it now, as a distiller, I'm watching the temp on the column. I'm watching the proof on the proof gauge. I'm taking my cuts. So as the first shots come out, it's kind of like, these are the undesirables. I destroy them. I don't keep them. And then you get that middle section, and that's the section that you want. And so I might go into the tails a little bit. The tails do add they can add a little bit of flavor profile, but for the most part, I don't keep a whole lot of them. So at that point, you take your high wines at that point, the good stuff, and then you're going to proof it down. So one of 2 things, it's either going to go into a bottle or it's going to go into a barrel. So if it's going to go into a bottle, then you're going to proof it down to bottle proof. We have some clears over there. 90 proof is what we bottled those at. If it's going to go into the barrel, there's government maximums on that, what you can go into. There's rules for bourbon, there's rules for whiskey, like your max proof going into a barrel. For bourbon, there's rules as well. Has to be 51% corn. It's got to be just mashed and distilled in the USA. Max proof going into the barrel, 125. I never go that high. There's some minimums on that, and man, I'm missing one. Well, a minimum bottle is 80 proof. So, and it can't come off. Here's another: is it can't come off the still more than 160 proof. So, there's some rules on vodka. Vodka has to come off the still more than 190 proof. So you can't take a product that was distilled as vodka and just water it down and put it into a barrel and call it whiskey. That would be violating the rules. So there's rules on that established under CFR, and we have to follow those. So that's kind of a side note there of like how we establish proof of like what proof this has got to be at in order to be this product.
What are the rules for just for classes, or are they for safety?
Classifications and really quality control at the end of the day. You don't want to drink a whiskey that was distilled as a vodka.
Yeah.
Vodka's a neutral spirit. So, yes, there's rules. The rule book's probably, I don't know, 1.5 inches thick. There's a lot. And so when it comes off the still and you got your high wines, you're going to either bottle it or you're going to put it in a barrel. So if it gets bottled, then you proof it down to bottle proof and you bottle it. If it goes into a barrel, then you're going to drop it down to barrel proof. You're going to get it in your barrel, going to bung it up, record it, get it on your spreadsheet, get it over to the storage, the rick house over there, and get it on the storage rack. And then it sits. And so sits for however long you want it to sit. You got to declare your age on your bottle. If whiskey, you have to declare an age on it. So if you see the word straight on there, that means minimum 2 years. You don't have to write a number on there. And if you're blending barrels, it's the barrel of the youngest age. So if you had a 2.5-year-old barrel and then you had an 18-month barrel, you couldn't call it straight. It's under 2 years on that youngest barrel. So it's based off of the youngest barrel. If you get bottled in bond, some might have seen that. That's a 4-year minimum. I just write the age statement on all my bottles. I have one product that's declared straight, and that would be my 100% corn whiskey. So I do have a straight corn whiskey. So with that, it's 100% corn, and it's been in a barrel for a minimum of 2 years with that statement on the front. Yeah.
I guess because yours are all single barrel, it's probably kind of cool to write the age of.
It is.
Yeah,
it really is. And you can sit there and there's other distilleries that write their age on there. You just have to do it to the minimum barrel that's been blended in there. So
why is the proof different for the bottle and the barrel?
Storage. You go into the barrel at different proofs, it's going to pull different characteristics of the barrel out. Also with the environment, very dry climate, lots of barometric pressure changes. We're not very humid up here. There's a lot of factors on the aging in the barrel within itself. There's different char levels in the barrel. I believe I do 3 to 4 char, which is medium to kind of heavy char. 0 all the way down to no char. Well, whiskey's got to be charred, but there's like wine barrels, or there's double cask too. Some people will store whiskey in a barrel and then they'll put it in a wine cask for a month, and now you have kind of a double cask barrel with that, or a product with that. So a lot of variables.
Yeah, it's
the industry.
It's cool hearing that. It sounds like it's a whole world.
There's for me, it's you crunch through the rules and you just learn them, and you got to know them.
Yeah.
The government doesn't have a sense of humor about making a mistake.
Yeah.
They might, okay, we'll kind of you got to really kind of keep on top of it. So
what was the biggest thing you learned in this process that you didn't foresee, or was it?
That's a good question. I came in pretty confident,
Hmm.
And that confident, man, that I got shot down hard. It was like, whoa, I don't think I know as much as I think I know. I came in, I built all this equipment, and I know how to, and I've had to dump 1,000-gallon mashes down the drain because I screwed up the ferment process. And you're like, oof, there's 1,200 pounds of grain.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. So what I've learned is got to kind of be humble and be willing to accept the mistakes. Because when you make those kind of mistakes, it kind of digs into the wallet a little bit. So,
Did you have anyone working with you, advising you through some of this?
um, so I kind of, I knew, um, so going back, so Montana's first distillery was Rough Stock Distillery. I believe that was back in 2008. So I got to know the owner pretty well, and I got to know the distiller, Jared. He's a good friend of mine today. Love Jared, great guy. Who's still, uh, I just saw him this last December. I got married in December. He
Congrats.
came out for it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I got to do a shoot out to my lovely wife, Sunny. She kind of keeps the wheels on the car a little bit, in a sense. So I kind of, and him and I became really good friends. I did some work for Rough Stock on his steam system and the stills and stuff. And so I was kind of like, this is pretty neat. This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Kind of got the gears turning. There was a boom in Montana where like fermented beverage and spirits just opened up. And my first was installing all this. I've done systems for Bozeman Spirits, uh, Dry Hills, uh, the folks over at Matt Brewery, Mountains Walking, all these systems. And what's kind of cool about it is you see how different people do things. And it's, it's cool.
Yeah.
You see how some people do a ferment, how they want it piped, how other people do a ferment, and how they want it piped. And you can gain a lot of knowledge just by seeing how different different people, different companies make their product. And so that was a real large um, bucket of knowledge, really. So, and at the same time, you have some materials left over and so so when it came to me building the distillery out there, I had all these materials. So I built the still. I built all the equipment in there. I built the pulverizer. I piped all the heat exchangers, the scales, everything. And I did. There was a lot of people that helped. Big shout out to Jeff and Erica, especially Erica over at Dry Hills. They really helped me with the paperwork side of it.
Hmm.
You get into the paperwork side of it, and it's overwhelming at times. You're just like so many like line items there to potentially fill out, and you're like, I don't even know where I'm at. Like, what am I supposed to fill out? And so it's a community where everybody kind of helps everybody. Get the phone call. Hey, I'm out of enzymes. Can I grab some enzymes from? Yeah, sure. Come on over.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what's really cool about this industry is it's competitive, but at the same time, everybody's willing to help everybody. And that's what's really neat about it.
You said 2008 was the first one?
I might be off on my years on that. I think Rough Stock actually opened up prior. That was actually the year I kind of started working on their stuff. So it might have been a little bit prior to that. Don't hold me that to the fire on that.
But it's fairly newer.
Yeah, surprisingly,
Yeah.
up to that point, you couldn't have a distillery in Montana. They actually had to change some legislation in order for them to even open. So he went through the process of getting the laws changed so that a distillery could even open up in Montana.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So he's kind of the pioneer of it, and I got to be a little part of that with working on some of the equipment and stuff, and getting to know the distiller there, and very knowledgeable guy. You know, he kind of worked in the beer industry prior and kind of came over to the distilling side of things. But like I say, you know, a lot of the science is similar. It's just you kind of get to a point and then we just take a different path of like whether it's going to go, you know, sit on fermentation and whether it goes into a bright tank or whether it goes into a still.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of there's distilleries out there that follow a lot of the same, you know, they do a lot or they actually lauder it out like the breweries. And it's very similar up to that point. But the decision is like, well, we're going to put it in a bright tank and carbonate it and put it in a keg, or we're going to throw it in a still and we're going to separate it. So, but it, you know, it's fun to be part of it.
Yeah, I'd imagine building that whole facility for yourself and then seeing a product come out of
Yeah,
that. It's got to be very satisfying.
It's rewarding.
Yeah.
It's and it's a lot of fun. So a lot of dynamics to it. And I, you know, and it's and again, it's just a really neat community to be part of.
Because I know it seems like breweries are popping up all over the place and they've become very popular. Has the market got oversaturated? Has it calmed down at all? Or
so a little bit. I sense it's kind of I moved into the roasting coffee a little bit. I'm Gen X, right? So we were the ones drinking from the garden hose, and we were the ones that I don't know. I kind of think our generation, I mean, yeah, we partied and yeah, we kind of drank.
Yeah.
Right. New generation, not so much, a little bit more, and nothing against that. Right. I mean, it's good to be healthy. It's good to go and all that, but non-alcoholic industry is definitely, becoming more popular. There's flavored cocktails now and carbonated alcohol drinks that we're kind of competing against. The market's changing.
Yeah.
And so I kind of shifted over to the coffee a little bit to offer up a non-alcoholic product.
Mm-hmm.
It gets you on different shelves. You can now be on a shelf in like the grocery store. You're not just restricted to the bars and the liquor stores and selling your product through the state. You know, so, and we're starting to move a little bit more out.
Yeah. You've gotten that in some stores now.
We do.
Yep.
The little outpost out there in Four Corners, a little postal, little post office kind of, I guess I would call it. They carry it. Fezziwigs down there, she carries it, and actually Ashley out at the Rustic Cup, she actually serves it as a cold brew.
Nice.
Yeah, she has it on cold brew out there. And so we're starting to kind of get into some stores.
Cool.
So it's diverting a little bit. I'm seeing kind of a trend. And so I'm trying to adapt to that trend. So,
yeah, I wonder so my little brother is I guess he's a level 2 wine sommelier.
Oh,
I wonder what the wine market is doing. Because with that same generation you were talking about, you know, White Claws and seltzer.
Yeah.
I wonder what the wine market will look like in 30 years.
You know, that's a really good question. It's an industry it goes in cycles.
Yeah.
I'm not much, my wife, she's the wine gal. She came from wine country and she knows wine. My palate's a little sloppy for wine. I don't catch all the profiles and everything like I do with whiskey. That's a good question. And I don't really know anybody that has a winery, you know, or it's there's a trend right now, and we're hopefully just kind of hopefully it's going to start ticking up a little bit. Just in general, or I'm seeing a little downplay in the spirits industry, but I think I think it'll come back.
Yeah.
As far as wine goes, I don't know about the wine. Then again, the wine is something where people will buy a bottle of it for dinner. I'm not going to buy a bottle of 80 proof for dinner. You know, that's
Yeah.
it's a different, it's a little bit different, um, scenario for when, like, why you buy a bottle of whiskey versus a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Kind of a little bit, you know, I sip on whiskey on the rock when I'm relaxing and chilling out, where, you know, wine, you're going to pair it with a meal.
Yeah.
And you could do that with whiskey too, but generally wine's a little bit more popular with that kind of, I don't know, I guess you call it, scenario.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Things do go in phases too, though.
Yeah,
So
they do.
it's interesting the way
It's
things
like,
changes.
it's like construction.
Yeah.
Construction goes in phases.
Yeah.
And so, everything, it's, it's a sine wave, you know, it
Yeah.
oscillates. So,
Yeah. I mean, you brought up construction. Let's talk about your construction
oh
career and
boy.
your pipe fitting career.
Yeah, there's a lot there too. I mean, there's a lot involved. I mean, a lot of that is how I even got involved with,
Yep.
the fermented beverage and spirit industry. I've been in the trades for about 35 years now. You know, growing up, I'm 51. I was born in 74. So I grew up in Bozeman during the 80s,
Okay.
you know, different time. Just different, you know. We didn't have the little black boxes that we carry around with us now, the phones, you know. It was rolling around on the BMX bike, delivering papers, carrying a pocket full of quarters so that you could call home when the lights turned on. Just different.
Yeah.
And paper route was probably my first job that really gave me a inclination of what entrepreneurship's all about. You know, you have to, yeah, paper route. I don't even know if they have paper routes anymore. I really don't know. I haven't seen anybody throwing papers in a long time.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think the boxes are still there on mailboxes, right?
I think so. Yeah. So I don't know if they just drive around in a car now, but it used to be, man, there was a fleet of us on our bicycles going around, throwing them on your doorstep. So
Yeah.
that was kind of my first, you know, I started that at 10, and it really kind of gave me, it gives a person like, this was what I like to run a small business. You know, you got to buy your papers
Okay.
from the, whatever it may be, what Chronicle or the Gazette, whoever. You got to buy your papers. And at the end of the month, that bill's due. So you got to get out there, you got to collect the money, and you got to go down and pay that bill.
Okay.
You know, unless you're lucky enough to where your whole route just pays at the office, but that's not the case. So if they're paying month by month, you're responsible for that bill. So it was yeah, here's your liabilities. Here's your accounts receivable. It's like, this is how it works. You know, like that was my first real learning curve, but I always kind of had my head under the hood of a car. You know, through high school, I was in shop classes. I never went to a trade school. You know, I took a lot of metal shop, wood shop, leather shop in high school. But as far as, never went to a trade school. As far as learning what I know and how I got here, was through the apprenticeship programs and just people helping me learn. So the pipe welding, go back to, Chris Peters. You know, he owns, I don't think he owns Manhattan Plumbing anymore, but we all used to work for Williams Plumbing at some point. A lot of, it's kind of the shop that we have. So I worked for Williams Plumbing for 21 years. And, you know, Chris he helped me. He's like, hey, here's how you weld a piece of pipe. And he helped me, and, you know, good enough to where I could pass a test, and then you're in it, you're doing it, and you're getting better and better and better at it. So then I went to MSU for a little bit, and it was just kind of like, I took some core classes, and I was like, you know, criminology would be fun, but, you know, an apprenticeship slot opened up at Williams. So I'm like, I'm gonna take it. Got onto the plumbing apprenticeship, and it really just took off from there. So my advice, like, man, I really push for young people to consider trades. I mean, it treats a lot of people very well. And so I went through the apprenticeship, got my journeyman's license, started running jobs around the state, traveled a lot. I did everything from, Malmstrom Air Force Base, launch control facilities all around.
How far does Williams go?
I don't know. I haven't really, I still have, I know Kevin Scott very well. He's their VP over there. I run into him every now
Okay.
and then. But they're a big company, they try, I don't know where they're at. I went on my own right around 2015.
Okay.
And so, I run into Kevin every now and then and, shoot the breeze, but I imagine they're probably just as big, if not bigger. I mean, they have a, new shop over there. And so I would imagine that they're still traveling quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I went through that, and then, I acquired, my certified welding inspector. So I'm also a welding inspector. So I'm kind of the guy that, if you want to get qualified and you want to get qualified in welding, you got to prove some welding experience, and it's a test that you take through the American Welding Society. It's not easy, 3-part test. And, and then that also includes I subcontract out these services. So I go into, new buildings being built, and I inspect structural welding. So we go in there, make sure everything's welded first. You'd be surprised at the stuff I run into. Just like, this is all public safety, and you'd be surprised. I don't really run into crappy welds. I mean, to get into that point where you're welding on the structure, you got to have some paperwork. You got to have your proof that you know how to weld. You got to have your qualifications, submit your procedures. There's a process to it. Generally, kind of what I run into is like, oh, the guy rolled up on break, they all left, and here's a weld that's missing. So you flag it, you make sure it gets welded. So, but at the same time, we're also looking at the quality of the welds that are placed, and it's, it's a process. So those are some of the services that I now have under my hydro iron business, and I also do. I do the proctoring, the testing for the MSU Gallatin College. So they hired me to come in as a third party and administer the testing for the students. You want to keep testing third party. You don't want to, and that's kind of why they do that is you don't want any conflict of interest. You really don't want your instructor giving you a test.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The instructor's like, I want to look good too.
Yeah, I got you.
So they hire me, I come in, and that's great. I love seeing these kids, and they're not all kids. I call them kids, I guess, because I'm 51 now, but young adults.
Yeah.
And the gals and the guys in there, it's fun to watch them learn, especially when they pass their test. They're excited, and I get into some conversations with some of these kids, and they're like, most of them are just like, they just want to get out and work. Yeah. Some of them are excited. A lot of them, they start their own business. They get a welder on the back of their truck, and they're out there, they're doing it.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. I love seeing progression like that with when people acquire a credential, and then they pursue it and they kill it, and they do, and all that's kind of how I got into, with all that, I kind of got into the brewing or into the distilling out here, at the point where prior to that, it was, with those credentials that I had learned through the years, I was able, there's not a lot of folks out there that work on steam anymore. Steam's kind of a dinosaur when it comes to processes anymore, as far as whether it's process steam or heat steam. Process is where it's not for comfort heat, it's for everything else. You're trying to boil a kettle of water, so that would be considered process. You're doing a process. Not many people worked on that. So there was a wave that came into, I'd say, Montana, definitely this county, and I was able to help these folks out in building their systems, and it's great. You establish this relationship with them, And when I went to start mine, everybody's helpful. They're just like, oh, hey, here's how you do the paperwork. Here's kind of what we're doing on our mashes to get higher yields. Everybody is a very helpful um, industry. And so, yeah,
So
that's kind of how I.
was that a little bit of a niche? You're saying
It
working on the steam?
was. It was. When I went on my own, uh, my first job on my own was Matt Brewery.
Okay.
Yeah, PK and the boys down there. They were like, "We're gonna have you finish this out," and then from there, honestly, that was one of the scariest things I've ever done. There's having kids. Well, me not, but becoming a father.
Mhm.
That's scary. And then there's going on your own, and you've got like $500 in your account, and you've got a mortgage to pay, and you're like, man, is this what I should be doing?
Yeah.
But it's worked out. And I tell people my story and say, you can do this too. You can do this. You just keep moving, forward. And end of the day, do your best work. Take pride in what you do. Don't leave something unfinished. And you will always have a repeating customer, or, you'll establish a client, a relationship with that. So do good work. Nothing travels faster in this valley than somebody that does crap work.
I was going to say, especially this valley, because
yes,
it's growing, but it's small.
Yes. So if you go around doing crap, that's going to be your name. Nobody's going to want to hire that. And so when the big boom was going on, people just wanted the warm bodies there. But I think things have come back to the point where, yeah, you know what? The fly buyers, you're out of town. You're gone, and so that also comes, like what we were talking about earlier, it comes in phases.
Yeah. There's kind of
with the construction, like
there's some gold rushes.
Yeah, there's a gold one. Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Everybody's coming here to get their little piece of the pie.
Yeah.
But, along with that comes people that do substandard work. Yeah. So I did catch that niche, and I was able to help all these other folks out and getting going and learning, setting up these other systems definitely influenced me setting up my own.
Yeah. That's cool. You kind of had some models to see.
Yeah.
And then what gave you the courage to go out on your own in the first place?
I'd always kind of wanted to just be my own boss. Mm-hmm. And it was just, I'd been with a large mechanical and plumbing company for 21 years. And it was just kind of like, if I don't do this now, I'm probably not going to do it. And just, man. And I had prior, so my welding inspection business, I had that prior. I had a small LLC. So I was doing that while I was working. It wasn't a conflict of interest. It's not like the plumbing outfit I was working for was going around doing welding inspections. Yeah. So there wasn't a conflict of interest there. If you're working for a mechanical company, whether it's HVAC or whatever, and you're going out pulling permits and you're doing work on the back, that's a conflict. You're creating, you kind of create some competition for the hand that feed you there. So there was, I kind of had that prior. And then when I went on my own, it was like, well, I'm just going to add this to the service.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so that's it. And I love it. I really love it. And I like to help others acquire that too. So I think that, Montana's a good state for running your own business. It doesn't cost much to start an LLC, and it's fairly simple.
Yeah.
You get to other states and
you think that's the hard,
a little more to it.
You think that's the hard part? That's the easiest part.
It really is.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the hard part is staying dedicated and just don't. I've learned my mistakes with like, this is good enough. I can cut a corner here because I got to get to this other job. And then I don't know, a day later you get the call back because now I got a leak over there. You're like,
yeah.
You just, You learn that real quick when you're running your own business because
Yeah.
it's
It comes back to
it
you.
comes back, and guess who's going to be the one to go back and fix it? So,
Are the welding inspections, is there oversight with the state for any of that?
there is not. Um, so we run under a code,
Okay.
building code. I believe we're under the 2021 International Building Code. So it's interesting about code. Yes, it's required,
Hmm.
but you get into code and then you got codes referring to codes referring to codes. So you get into IBC, it's referring, AWS, and then that's referring to AISC. So you got this kind of trail there. So at the end of the day, it's all based off of local jurisdictional authority. So that would be commercial buildings generally, yes. If it's public, if you pull a permit and it's a public building, public safety, if you're building in Bozeman, Belgrade requires it. It's up to the jurisdictional authority. If you pull a state permit and it's a commercial property and you got iron going in there, generally, yes, you're going to have to do if it's some homeowner doing their own thing, no, it's not a public safety liability there. I generally will subcontract out under either the owner or the engineer, architect, kind of along that lines.
Yep.
That's kind of called out. If you work for the GC, which I don't really, I'll do it. Don't like doing it because now there's kind of it does create the conflict of, well, if you don't pass this, we're not going to pay you.
Yeah, you don't want to be in the middle of that.
So you don't want to be in the middle of that. But anytime I do it, it's, hey, we're going to do this, but this report's going to go directly to the jurisdictional authority if we do this. So it's transparent. So I've never run into any issues where just got to be aware of it.
Yeah.
So, but it's definitely easier on the body than the plumbing side of things, and it's more showing up and being able to reference knowledge. You don't necessarily, as an inspector, the welding industry it's incredible. The science of welding in general is huge. They are changing stuff to things that back 10 years ago, I didn't know was possible. Welding ferrous to non-ferrous. How do you even do that? I didn't even know the molecular structure made it possible. They're figuring this stuff out. Alloys being added to materials to, get crazy strengths out of these materials. So I am on the structural side, which is here's the general materials that you're working with, and this is how it goes together. But there's also inspectors out there within like nuclear industry, within aerospace industry, all these other industries where they're running off of different specifications and sometimes code, there's a nuclear code, let's say, but we also have to follow engineered specifications. So the engineer of record has the say all. Like when there's a problem, it's like you let them know, and it's like it either meets their design or it doesn't, and they're the ones that make that call. So as a CWI, we are kind of the engineer's eyes and ears, and we're kind of reporting what's going on there. And then with the knowledge that we have of referencing code of like whether, hey, was this placed correctly or not, and then we report to the engineer, and they're either yay or nay too. So, but it's an incredible industry, especially what they're getting into laser now. Laser welding, it's crazy what they're coming out with, and every year it just keeps just getting more and more, and it's incredible. What they're doing with just energy sources. So an energy source is power that comes into basically whatever you're welding and applying it to being able to fuse material. When I was welding, it was 60 hertz. That's what's coming in off of the power panel. Now they're taking frequency generators, and they are compacting frequencies to hundreds and thousands of cycles per second. They're taking the sine wave and they're cutting the tops off of them. Now you have square wave, and that affects how a weld gets cleaned while you're welding it. They're changing the length of the sine. It's like whiskey and coffee. The variables now are astronomical. Back in the day when you just got the old Lindy welder and you're welding in the shop, you were stuck with whatever came over the power surface. And now it's all capacitor. They got these frequency generators. And I'll be honest, I don't get into that. I don't realize the thing with structural welding is it's very basic.
Yeah.
And you kind of like that code I know very well. And do a little bit with pipe, as far as pressure pipe and pressure vessel. That code's probably this thick. There's guys that just specialize in just that. But it's a great career path. Start out welding, when your body's kind of wearing out, you go and go do some inspection. There's also NDE, so non-destructive testing. You get out there, they send sound waves through welds in order to test them. You got radiograph. That's another great career path for people who have been in the trades for a while and you're just kind of wearing out. And it's not as physical, and you're working more with the knowledge rather than your body,
which is nice because it will wear you out at some point.
It does. Yeah. And so it's another great career path for anybody that's looking to go that route. It's been good to me, but again, it's not easy. You have to, you got to do it, and you got to endure it, and you have to be willing to learn from mistakes. Got to be kind of humble a little bit. I've made mistakes. I've made wrong calls before, and you're like, I didn't see that part in there.
Yeah.
But you know what? When you do that, you remember it.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of my career. I like to share how I kind of got here because I like to see others acquire it as well. I have a lot of friends who are plumbers, a lot of friends who are electricians, HVAC. Ultimately, I really, I think being your own boss is fantastic. I love it. But, it's not for everybody. But at the same time, if you're in the trades and you go in, you can go home and at the end of the day, be like, man, I put that together.
Yeah.
And, and then on top of that, you'd be like, man, I put that together today and there wasn't any leaks. Sound. It was a sound system and it feels good, at the end of the day. And, yeah, I like seeing that. I see that with the students at the Gallatin College there with the welding. They're excited. They get that certificate and like, oh man, now I got some things that I can pursue now.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's cool. I like to see that.
You said it's 74s when you were born?
Oh yeah. Yep.
So a gentleman that he was born and raised in Montana, but I want to say it was like Livingston or not Livingston, Lewistown, somewhere up that way. And he said, I think he's roughly your age. And he was saying when he was growing up, all they thought of Bozeman was a redneck ski town.
It was.
And you've obviously seen it.
Oh, absolutely.
Change a lot.
Absolutely.
How's that been?
It was, so my father was a MSU professor.
Okay.
Up at MSU, civil engineer. And he also did a lot with avalanche research. So Bridger, man, remember hiking up there when I was a little kid with him, and he would drill in the cores, right? We'd pull the cores out, these big, big drifts, and then they would study the layers, and that's how they kind of, I know enough about the science of that to be dangerous, but it was very in-depth, but much different town. It really was. I mean, it was the days where, even up to, it's crazy times, rode my old Harley through the Crystal Bar once. That was, I don't know if they still do that, probably not, but those were kind of the days back in Bozeman.
Yeah.
And it has changed a lot. And I don't know. I like the old Bozeman. Like I say, it was back in the day where things were simple. I kind of miss those days, with running a business and everything so available. Running a business in 80s and 90s isn't like running a business now. I mean, your fax, you're faxing something over and hoping that they get it. Like that was the means of communication back
Yeah.
then. It wasn't having an email show up on your phone and everything being so instant. Had to have a little patience back then in order to get things done. Or if you have to put an order in for a box of nails to finish your house, it'll be here in about 3 days, 4 days, kind of thing. It's just different.
Yeah, different speed.
Different.
I know when I was a kid working for a guy, he was telling me, it's like, when I was younger, you'd make plans with somebody and they'd just be there. You couldn't call them.
Right.
Because the call was maybe beginning of the day and end of the day.
Yep.
And we're going to meet at 11 o'clock at this place. And
that's how it was. And there was just exactly.
Yeah.
It was different. And part of me was, and like I say, when we were ripping around town, down at the BMX track or skate park or whatever, it was like you always had a quarter in your pocket in case you had to find a payphone and call home.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I kind of remember the days of pagers. When I was an apprentice, we had to do some service work. That was part of the criteria.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like carrying a pager around, and then 911 would show up. So you knew it was an emergency and you had, you're calling it. I don't even know if there's no need for a pager anymore. I don't even know if they have them anymore because now everybody's got a phone.
Yeah.
So it's just different, it reminds me of the scene out of Caddyshack where the doctor goes to grab his pager and he gets electrocuted.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's how it was. It's like, that was the quickest means of communicating with somebody, was to send them an SOS message over a pager, and then they would call you back and you had to be by a phone.
Yeah. And you spent your whole career here too, in Bozeman?
I have.
So you've seen it grow.
I have, yeah.
So you've probably seen a few gold rushes, huh?
I have. It's obviously COVID was a little crazy.
Yeah.
I think we're finally kind of maybe starting to level out a little bit from the fiasco that created. I've also seen the real downtimes. 2008, that was tough.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen the ups and downs.
Yeah.
But I miss simple times of not having to be in such a rush.
Yeah.
A little patience, a little having a little more time back then was kind of nice. So
this was in the last year I bought that Toyota sitting out there. It's a Tacoma and it's manual. And I'm like, it's a little slower taking off. And I'm like, I got people going crazy behind me half the time because I'm just taking off slower, shifting gears. And I'm like, hey, this is the speed we're working at right now.
Yeah. It's,
I have some almost new vehicles in the shop too. I get the difference, but that thing, I like it. It's a different,
and it's going to probably last you 200,000 miles.
Yeah. Probably, I think if I keep it, it'll be a hunting truck. If I have kids, it could be their first truck if that thing's taken care of.
Yeah. It's, there's not, going back to the mechanic, there's not too many people that can tune a carburetor anymore.
Yeah.
That was the thing back when I was in high school was, pulling that old Rochester off there and pulling it apart and be able to, if you could tune a Rochester, you were doing pretty good. That was a kind of a complex carburetor to go through. But I like simple.
Yeah.
Simple is generally reliable. When I put in these systems for, like these steam systems for the breweries and the distillers, I keep it simple. That's why I like it. Steam's very simple.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's, you get into hot water heat systems. Oh my gosh. It's like, we got pumps for that. We got manifolds for this. Just the technology that I was kind of talking about welding. That also applies for hot water heating systems. The boilers now they got for hot water heating are just, you look at it, it looks like a rocket ship. You're like, oh my gosh, but it's 95% efficient. Okay. Hey, that's great. I think that's good. But you know what? There's, in my personal opinion, there's kind of a catch that comes with that. Is like when something goes wrong with it, you got to be a trained little IT guy to get in there. And there's sensors, there's computers, there's screens. I not totally into that. I'd rather just put an old plated cast iron boiler in there with a simple gas valve on it, and that thing will last for 40 years. And so I'm more along. That's why I like the steam. Is generally it's it's a simple system. There's a lot of people intimidated by it, but at the end of the day, I feel like it's a simple system. They're easy to work on, and there's a lot of energy there.
Yeah.
So
you're making me think of this. One of our vehicles sit out in the shop is a 24 Yukon. Last thing that had to go to billion for a software update. Obviously, we can't do that here,
right? And
we have a shop, but you can't do that in this shop.
You kind of handcuffed that way.
Yeah.
But obviously that's going to be a much more comfortable and nicer ride than a 1970 whatever or 1979 whatever. But I don't know. You could rip around in a fleet of 66 Lincolns. That'd be cool. Those are comfortable.
Yeah,
they're kind of neat. But
the new thing is those resto mods. They're like they basically take, a 70s muscle car and they update it with all the, with new suspension,
put like
new
a Hellcat
steering
motor in it or something. Yeah.
But it, looks like a 70s, 60s, but it rides like a 2020.
Right. That
sounds
great.
Like a dream.
Yeah. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
So I kind of, when I run my distillery the same way, I kind of run it very old school.
Mm-hmm.
I stick to simple because simple works. And, you don't have to generally go back and try to redo things.
Yeah. I'm with you because I told you I grew up on a farm. So that old school simplicity
it works.
Yeah. There's a piece to it.
There is.
Yeah.
So within the trades, it's all there. If you want to go the route of being technical, hey, I think that's great. If you want to put these systems, if you're an electrician, one way to I got a lot of friends who are electricians, but man, if you know how to do control wiring, man, if you know control wiring and you know how to go into, let's say, a bottling plant and you can troubleshoot a PNID and find the relay that is causing this whole entire system to be shut down, you don't have to wire houses. Like, that is a exceptional skill to have.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I like to, don't just be a simple plumber. Go in there, know boiler controls, expand your wealth of knowledge. Like, always kind of push yourself to improve. Like, know the envelope of, especially controls. If you know controls, like, at some point, you get really good at that, then that's what you're going to be doing. You don't have to sit there and pull Romex or pull PEX pipe or whatever when it's 30 below in a house. You'll be where it's nice and warm. So ultimately, within the trade, you advance to kind of get to that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, like you said, you can be in a position when you're older that you're using your brain a little bit more.
Yeah, you can be halfway retired when you're 65 and still stay active doing it. So
I think it's good advice.
Yeah, and I like to tell the kids that at the school or whatever I might be doing. Anybody I talk to, I try to be like, well, get in it now, get your credentials there, and then you'll get to a point where, you're not wearing your body out every day.
Yeah,
making a wage.
I think it's good advice.
Yeah.
Oh, and where can you tell people where to go to find you and find your coffee and find everything else?
Well, so Black Pot Distillery, we are located in the Bar 3 barbecue location there. We have limited hours on the sample room. We do Wednesday through Saturday, 5 to 8. So, and you can buy bottles there and coffee. We also are very open to just people coming in and just talking about it.
Yep.
We like to talk about it.
How often are you there during those hours?
Not very often. I was there last night.
Okay.
My friend Aaron, who he's a fishing guide. He helps me out
Okay.
with it all. And so he wasn't feeling well. So I went in and kind of covered the shift. But generally, I'm not there a whole lot. I'm kind of the guy behind the scene
Mhm.
getting the product in the bottle. As far as the plumbing stuff goes and all that, I don't advertise for that.
Yep. That's word of mouth.
That's word of mouth. And that keeps me plenty busy.
Mhm.
I'm where I have a group of clients. It's a circle. And I don't really take anything outside that circle. So if somebody gets referenced in,
Mhm.
somebody in that circle references somebody, then I'll look at it.
I got you.
But word of mouth,
Yeah.
like I say, I think that's the number one advertising. That's really all the advertising. If you do good work, that's all you need within this valley.
Yeah, I agree.
And I do go to I don't do any plumbing in Big Sky. Stay out of Big Sky. I do welding inspections up there. But it's a word of mouth.
Yeah.
Basically when it comes to that side.
And for the distillery, do you have a website too?
The distillery does have a website.
Yep.
So blackpotdistillery.com.
Okay.
I believe.
I can post it with the video.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I run it. Sometimes I make mistakes. we were closed Wednesdays while one of the employees was getting some medical attention on their arm done. So, and then I forgot to change the hours on the website versus it was on the door. And so then we got some bad feeds. Somebody shows up, we're closed. So I dropped the ball, and I'm not super techie.
Mhm.
I probably just need to have somebody else do that. But
Right.
we do have a website, and I try to keep it up to date, updated as much as I can.
When you said your wife, you wanted to make a shout out to her.
Oh, absolutely. So I got married in December, and her name's Sunny, great gal. And she, for me, I was always kind of this run by the seat of my pants kind of guy, right? But you meet a woman like that, and she's like, look, you've got to slow down. I was the kind of guy and I'm learning, this is hard when you own and run your own businesses. Like a call comes in, and you're just like, man, I got to get on this right now. And you just kind of push everything aside. She's like, look, you don't have to do that. You can slow down. You can. So she's teaching me patience, and patience is tough. I feel I'm pretty humble. So when you make mistakes and you learn from your mistakes, that humbles a guy. But learning patience is tough.
Yeah.
And so she's definitely helping me work on scheduling things out and being a little bit more efficient with my time. Because when something doesn't need to be dropped right away, and then now you got to go back and finish what you started. And that's kind of how mistakes get made too. You leave a job site. Oh, I got to get on this, got to do this, go take care of it. You come back, and like I said, there's a guy that took a break. I go in to inspect a weld, and it's missing because they rolled up, they took a break, and then they ended up moving somewhere else. So she definitely helps me in that arena.
My fiance calls them boundaries.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to have boundaries. I would take work. I was horrible with bringing work home with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard not to do that. Really hard. So I've been learning you got to shut it off. You can't let it consume you. There's other things in life. There's faith, there's family, there's other things in life that you have to appreciate.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Shout out to Sunny.
Shout out to Sunny.
Well, I appreciate you making time to come.
I appreciate
sharing the story. Yeah.
This has been great.
Cool. Well, thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Owen. Thanks for listening, folks. You can find the full blog post for every episode, along with key takeaways and links at mountain-mule.com. If you haven't yet, consider following the show. That one small action helps these Montana businesses get seen, grow, and thrive, and it helps this podcast keep going too. If you know a business that would be a good fit for the show, we'd love to hear from you. Just reach out through the website or social. Thank you for supporting these Montana businesses. See you on the next show.